This is the Daily Saints Pod with Zach and Greg. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am your host, Zach and Finch. Welcome to the Daily Saints Pod. There is no illustrious co-host today. Gregoriel is out of action. He is unfortunately come down with illness. If anyone can listen to our last pod, they could probably tell he was on his way. And yeah, he's just a bit wiped out for today. And we're going to be talking about transfers today, which is a little bit exciting because, we're now in the January window. Shame there isn't anything super exciting actually happening, but don't worry, I've got enough information to at least get us through a bit of time. So, quick other note, quick things to talk about to start with. There is probably going to be an episode next week where we talk about player power. And we've been kind of asked about this, I think, on Spotify. Greg said there was a comment. Alfie House basically put out a tweet about the players that he thinks that would be worth keeping towards the end of the season. There are some notable omissions in that. Some people have read between lines. Ugly Inside did a whole piece on whether or not it's to do with player power and there are cliques, etc., which there are bound to be with any social group. That's just kind of how large groups work. But yeah, we kind of share our own thoughts, and I think anyone that's long-term listeners of the show will probably know where we lie on it. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of brief that out before we dive straight into transfers. So I'm going to be talking about staff as well, just because, rumours are bound, and we've also had a new incoming who, so far, the coverage on this show has been me being and who even is this guy we've brought in as an assistant whilst raging at the 4-0 loss to Middlesbrough? Terrible game to start with, but apparently he joined basically 2-3 hours before kickoff, I think they announced it. So not really his fault. But yeah, we'll start at the top. So Andy Goldie is supposedly the leading contender to be Leicester City's new technical director. So this is a bit of a problem because he's been in charge of the academy for a while. And it would be a big blow considering the academy is one of sort of our best assets, right? Remove the Sports Republic lenses or whatever. The academy has always been a thing that's been associated with Southampton, and the players that have been associated with it. And most recently, obviously, the Tyler Dibbling moving to Everton for a substantial amount of money. I think it's the most that was ever paid for an academy player. And we've also still got people like Cam Bragg and Jay Robinson coming through the academy's ranks into our first team. And some of that success is going to be down to the people running it, obviously. And so to lose them would be a bit of a problem. And it also continues to be has been an issue of the Sports Republic reign of when they've got people, they've lost them, right? The only person that they've managed to hold on to amongst rumours so far has been Sports. And that's because the man himself is too invested in this project to want to go elsewhere at the moment. Doesn't mean forever though. But yeah, looking at sort of Jason Wilcox, who's having his own nightmare time at Manchester United, and other kind of people that have left over time, it's going to be less than ideal if he moves on. But according to The Athletic, he said he is ready to move on to a hands-on role at a first team. So clearly he wants a opportunity to do something outside of youth football, I guess. Yeah, I think it would be more impactful long term than it would be in the immediate forte. But we've only really got back to having the academy of old quite recently, right? Where we're finally sort of the better prospects have come through. And we've had sort of 2 years on the bounce now where we've had players transition directly into the first team. So I don't think that it's great for the club, but we'll just have to wait and see because so far we don't know. And I guess we'll go from there. Right, so moving swiftly on to one of the big talking points. Transfers out. Damien Downs has moved on loan to Hamburg. So this has all been confirmed now. There are pictures. This is all posted from as confirmed by Pletty Florian Plettenberg. Who covers a lot of the German football side of things. He'll be covering a transfer we talk about later as well. They have an option to buy at 9 million to 10 million euros, with up to 12 million euros possible if bonuses are met. He will have a 500,000 euro loan fee dependent on appearances. And during his time at Hamburg, he will have his full salary covered. So we got some opinions on that, I'm sure. When it comes to Downs, it's a difficult run, right? Because when he first started and came in, we had that preseason game where he scored a good goal and everyone was kind of excited, and then he's just kind of not taken off. Like sort of coming at the end of games, not really been able to make an impact, not been able to sort of do the role that the club kind of expected him to do. And that is to kind of play a Ross Stewart, like Paul Noachu style striker. And somebody put in comments to Alfie House that in actuality he's more suited to like an Archer sort of Armstrong role, right? Which Alfie agreed with, but also Greg has been saying that since we signed him. Basically, is that we kind of seem to be playing him a lot differently to what we should be, and that's probably hampered his ability to grow. And I do really feel sorry for the lad because when he first joined us, obviously we spent a lot of our time absorbing all of the media around Saints just for the podcast, and so because of that, we watch pretty much everything that comes out. And there was a interview with two American ex-internationals. So we'll see, interviewing an American guy who's got his opportunity to come play in England, really excited to play for the club, really excited to get back to the Premier League because there was still, I think, far more optimism at that time that we're going to come back. And yeah, he was just really excited to be able to showcase his stuff. And unfortunately, that's just not been the case. And part of that was obviously he wanted to get more game time, get more goals to remain in contention for the World Cup. Because obviously he was an international footballer. He was being picked by Pochettino up until sort of he just dropped out of the first team entirely. And then obviously picked up an injury even later on, and it just hasn't been seen since. So yeah, it's just I kind of feel bad for him, but I think that Greg summed it up quite nicely when we were talking about it off air, which is that sometimes transfers like this just don't work out. Ben Brereton Diaz is like another perfect example of that, right? Is that probably due to him being, I don't know, played out of position, not really sort of kicking on, although I think it's different with Diaz because he obviously had like his mate in Adam Armstrong here. But even then, that wasn't like that partnership never really clicked either. And, he really struggled before moving on and has carved out a little bit better time for himself at Derby, like picked up a few goals, which, is more to be said for his time here. And it's almost like a similar thing. So the other thing to bear in mind is out of all of the summer transfers we had, he's kind of the only one that I would say hasn't worked out properly, right? Like Quasi does good, Yanda, fantastic signing, Fellows, fantastic signing. Azaz, when he's, on a hot streak, scored goal after goal after goal. Cienza is something special. So to kind of only have one player out of all of those that hasn't quite kicked on, he now has a chance to kind of revitalise his career in a place he's far more familiar. And good luck to him. I don't think I'd expect to see him back as a Southampton player. I just have a feeling that regardless of what happens at the end of the season, he'll probably end up going back to Germany. But, for his sake, I hope that he starts to bag goals and gets himself back into the US team. But it is what it is. So, au revoir and farewell. Moving swiftly on, Ryan Fraser. Now, this isn't actually a transfer out story. This is a bit of a weird one. He was rumoured to be joining Western Sydney Wanderers, right? And then all of a sudden, Alfie House was like, nah, he's not joining them. And then we've basically had nothing else since. It was a bit of a strange one to me, but he's only got, I think, 6 months left on his contract. He's kind of in a similar boat to Joe Aribo, right? Where he will be going probably at the end of the season if we don't offer him anything. But I think that a couple of people have celebrated that. I think are probably, from my opinion, in the wrong. Like he's been one of the few players this season that stepped up into places that we wouldn't have expected him to, right? Where he's stepping in for Fellows and pretty much anything that he's been given, he's done. Has he done them great? Probably not, because he's been played out of a position quite a few times. But considering when he joined us, there was a lot of conversation around his attitude and what type of player he was, and he's going to stab you in the back eventually, and this and the other. And then a lot of people kind of felt that when Russell Martin went, right, and he wasn't really picked at all by Jurich, and it was just that he preferred Solomana over Fraser and never really played him anywhere else. And then obviously we expected him to maybe go over the summer, and then early games under Will Steele, he was picked quite a lot, and he was one of the few players I'd say put in effort every game he was in. So yeah, I think when the time comes, it'll be sad to see him go. and I think he has done a solid job for us while being here. But again, if he's out of contract soon and he wants to move on, that's totally by his right. And I also think that we probably need to start replacing some of the old guard cohort with fresh blood that aren't, I guess, don't have the emotional baggage of like the last couple of seasons. Again, we'll save that for our player power episode, I think. So that's it for transfers out. So let's talk about transfers in. Ben Garner, who is our new coach or new assistant coach to Tonda Eckert. So yeah, he joined, and I feel bad for the fact that he's just managed a couple of second-rate League One sides and this, that, and the other. George Rees-Julian did an excellent article on who he is, which means I'll probably not really bother doing a profile episode because like all of the information is there. It's worth giving it a read. It will be in the description. But I'll just give you an outline that's covered in that article. So 45-year-old coach who has played a role developing Zaha, Klein, and Victor Moses. He has a reputation for helping younger players and a reputation for playing attacking football. So he would also, like when he was at West Brom, would basically lead coaching from like Monday to Thursday, and then Tony Pulis would come in and do tactics on Friday. So he's done a lot behind the scenes, right? He's had previous roles at Colchester, Charlton, Swindon, and Bristol Rovers. And again, Lambert gave him his seal of approval when working under him at West Brom, although these are comments from 2019. So who knows what 7 years would do to a man. In footballing terms, that can be an incredibly long time. In coaching terms, maybe not so much, especially if you ask somebody like Mr. Warnock. So it is what it is. But again, I kind of feel bad that he took got a bit of a drive-by from me in my big run post Middlesbrough, right? Because that game made me cross, and I'm still cross about it. But obviously, he was announced like 2 or 3 hours before, so we've had absolutely zero influence. And maybe having an experienced head around Tonda will help. It's difficult because I also think that apparently that completes his coaching setup, and I just don't see the coaching setup we currently have as having the ability to get us where supposedly Sports Republic want us to be. And this might be to do with Spore's sort of weird trying to set up his own coaching team made out of various different people that don't know each other, right? We saw that early on with Will still not really bringing in any of his own coaching staff apart from one coach that he worked with in France. Everyone else sort of being separately interviewed. And it's going to be difficult, I'm sure. And I think it's people wanted more excitement and pizzazz. Like, that was never going to happen, I think, with coaching staff. Like, unless all of a sudden they're bringing in really, really well-known big names that we'd expect. I just don't see how that would happen. Like, no one was that excited with Trollope, despite the fact that he also got, a team promoted to the Premier League, which probably, admittedly, whatever problems Luton are having now, he is now back in the Premier League, coaching a team that are going through significantly worse circumstances than we did last year. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because in one sense, I can understand the argument of it's not like exciting. He doesn't seem to like have the experience for what we want. The flip side of that is that I think we are going to struggle with the position we're in to bring in the types of backroom staff that people would want. And then there's also the underlying argument to all of this, which is, does it matter if somebody behind the scenes is saying we need to play a specific way, we need to do a specific thing? Does it really matter who's there as long as they can get the players to do what the players do? So hey ho, everyone can have their own opinion on it, but we'll see if it makes a significant difference, right? Like for some people, they said that Danny Roll was the brains behind Hasenhüttl. Who knows what will happen going forward. So moving on to a player, Issa Doumbia. He is a 22-year-old and plays for Serie B side Venezia. He is a right-footed central midfielder. We have been linked with him over this window. Ugly Inside has written about it. The 72 has written about it. There's not really any other links other than that. But apparently we're after one, which seems very odd because it doesn't really look like it's a space we need reinforcing. Like if you said to any Saints fan, what do we need? Most wouldn't say another central midfielder. If somebody goes, so potentially if you end up having like, say, Aribo, Flynn Downs, because those are the only ones I could really see realistically going. Maybe it would be worth having something else, but also we're not really bringing in crazy experience either, right? We're once again looking at sort of young players. However, he is described as a very physically strong midfielder with excellent timing of insertion, but who could certainly grow in terms of scoring, who guarantees in all respects reliability and security in midfield, according to Lagiovane Italia. So, yeah, all of that will be in the description if you want to have a look at the articles yourself. He has made a total of 44 appearances for his club with 4 goals and 2 assists, and 3 appearances for the Italy under-21s. Supposedly, we are in competition with Club Bruges for a signature. I would say would probably slightly more exciting prospects. But then Club Bruges have also got European football. It just depends whether he gets into their first team or anything, right? So we'll have to see. It just seems a bit of a weird one for me. Like, unless it's literally a signing for the future, the idea of us getting another central midfielder, so you could theoretically end up with Casper Yander, Flynn Downs, Shea Charles, Oriol Romeu, Cam Bragg, Joe Aribo, Matsuki can play there as well. Like, and then you're looking at like sort of right backs, and it's like wingers. We need probably more, in my opinion, attacking reinforcements. But hey ho, if we pick up that signing, it'll be slightly exciting anyway. I think it'll be a good player from what I've seen so far. But yeah, if you fancy checking him out, as I said, all of the stuff will be in the show description. And now onto the one that everybody cares about. So we're potentially picking up a new goalkeeper. Daniel Peretz is set to join Southampton. He has apparently now finished his medical. It was done yesterday, and that is according to Florian Plettenberg or Pletty Goal on X. We will pay a £400,000 loan fee, and we will retain an €8 million option to buy, which would be really, really good if he turns out to be really, really good. Right? Goalkeepers is a thing that me and Greg have discussed a lot. A lot. We were baffled. Like, again, I still think that we should have never let Ramsdale go on loan. If he wanted to leave, we should have just let him leave, right? Because clearly, by the looks of the time he's having at Newcastle, he doesn't want to come back. He seems to absolutely love the club. He seems to, be in all of the shots in the media and stuff, and he's now getting a bit of game time finally after starting on the bench quite a lot. However, it meant that we were stuck with this battle between Bazunu and McCarthy. Bazunu, who started in goal for Still, didn't do that great, came out. McCarthy was swapped in. McCarthy equally didn't do as great. The argument over whether we should put Baz in goal or McCarthy in goal, the constant, oh, well, McCarthy would have saved that, or, oh, no, Baz would have saved that. And in reality, I think most people have decided that neither are good enough to be a first-choice goalkeeper. Maybe Baz will mature into the role over time. Maybe he just needs more exposure. Maybe another loan deal will help. McCarthy is getting on a little bit now at this point and knows, probably is not going to be the first choice here. And then on top of that, you've got the fact that we then got like a third goalkeeper to just make up the numbers with George Long, right? Because obviously we needed a reserve goalkeeper just in case. But now there hasn't been anything about us sending him back yet as of when we're recording. Because if not, then technically we have Ramsdale, Bazunu, McCarthy, George Long, Dylan Moody, and Daniel Peretz. So it's a big cohort of goalkeepers. But it's exciting. I think it's finally a thing that we've all kind of known we've needed for ages. I don't really understand why it's taken so long for the powers that be to realise. And again, maybe they wanted to give Baz a chance. Maybe after he came up from injury, maybe he was more up to it. Maybe he trained really, really well. And then obviously the reality of him in it and just the statistic behind it is that just like he's not as good as we need him to be. So we're going to have potentially a new name in between a new person in between the sticks now. And hopefully he'll start to stop some goals. And at least we won't end up losing 4-0, etc. But I do feel bad for Baz because if that ends up being his last game for us, to kind of very much reminds me of a Angus Gunn situation where Angus Gunn's last game was like the 9-0 to Leicester, right, before he moved on. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think he's still a young guy. He's still got lots of time to develop and learn. I just think for the time being, we do need a experienced goalkeeper, and hopefully we will find that in Daniel Peretz. So moving swiftly on, there isn't much left to talk about. I saw some tenuous links elsewhere to Callum Wilson and other people that are now free agents, and again, that's more rumours than anything else. So I'm not going to substantially back that. But it's been a bit of a dry January so far for us when it comes to transfers. But one in, one out is probably going to be more exciting than it was last year, right? Like we haven't heard anything else about sort of any of the players on loan. We've heard nothing about whether or not Peretz and Diaz will stay at Derby or go elsewhere because he was rumoured to be going to the MLS or potentially further afield. We've also not heard anything about James Bree, who's still on loan at Charlton. Same with a couple of other players, right? Charlie Taylor, Will Smallbone, who I know Smallbone's out long-term injury still, to my knowledge. So yeah, we've not really heard anything else. Joe Aribo, who I would have expected to hear from sort of rumours from day one, we've not heard anything at all so far either. So I guess we'll just have to watch this space, and hopefully when we come around to talk about transfers next time around, there'll be something a little bit more exciting. But for those that have stayed with me, thank you very much. We are the Daily Saints Pod, recently independent. So yeah, give us a like and a follow on all the socials: Facebook, X/Twitter, the everything app, whatever you want to call it. Blue Sky, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We will be back tomorrow to talk about our game against Doncaster. I'm sure Greg will be back to his optimistic, buzzing self. I, however, will not be. I'm still mad. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, hopefully by that side we'll have a new goalkeeper in the squad and things will start to look up again. But as we're all aware, everything does feel very fragile and tensions rising. So that's that. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye. Bye. This is the Daily Saints Pod with Zach and Greg.